Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our class. And today we are going to be talking about the family, building off of our previous discussion on health issues, addiction and substance use issues. So today we are focusing on the families. And when we look at the Canadian families, we are going to be talking about some of the major um, challenges and issues that they face today. Remember, this discussion is happening within the context of the social problems. Okay, so that's what we are going to be looking at today. So first of all, by way of introduction, we know that in today's family, we have different forms. Okay, some people call it scholars call it portraits, the portraits of today's Canadian families. So we have them come in different shades, in different forms. For example, we have a blended family, we have what we call a nuclear family, we have same-sex families, we'll have, single parent families, and the different other shades of families that we have in Canadian society of today. So regardless of the type of family one lives in or one has, families today face some challenges, and these are the things we are going to be talking about. So we know that families, intimate relationships, and households have undergone rapid changes in the past several decades. And we know that one thing that the family as a concept that has happened to it is that it has been resilient of the different changes it has undergone for several years now. But we still have the family. I think some of us, not some of us, most of us, if not all of us, must have come from one. Yeah, even if somebody was born and, the parents are no longer there and they got raised in an orphanage. So that orphanage becomes a kind of family for that individual. But I know that overwhelming majority of us, we are born into a family, grew up in one, and there's an institution today we can still go back to as and call our families. Some of us have started our own families, so the concept of family has been with us and will probably continue to be with us in the near future. So, but then when I say the different portraits of the Canadian family, I mean that the family comes in greater diversity today. And that is why when we want to define the concept of family, it is a very difficult concept right now to define because of the different shades it comes with and because of the different forms it can take. So that makes one definition very, very difficult. So instead of talking about one definition, we can talk about many definitions of the family. So some of the social problems that impact the family include caregiving, and the needs of an aging population. So we'll talk more about that. Then the economic security of the family. Many families are struggling today because of the bad economy and because of, economic lack. So it's a very big challenge. It's a very big problem in many families. There was a time single salary, single income can make it and help the family to stand. But today, most families cannot cope without the both parents working and earning money. So that's a challenge today. And even when both parents are working and bringing home income, sometimes the family still struggles economically because they are unable to really, to really meet up obligations, financial obligations. Things are getting higher and higher, prices of items, bills that people pay at the end of every month, all these things are increasing, making it very, very difficult for some families to cope financially. And we have also noted the impact of new technologies on families. This impact comes in diverse ways, whether it comes in the fact of technology disrupting the way children are raised today, or even technology interfering in the process of how people are even born, or in the cyber, bullying or cyber crime that families have to deal with, whether it's also identity theft that may happen, and several other things that come with the technologies of today. So these are some of the major challenges families are facing today. So let's begin by looking at caregiving and the needs of an aging population. So Canada is one of the advanced industrialized countries in the world. And one of the things we have noted lately is the fact that, developed countries are aging. They have a challenge of aging population. So because they have a challenge of an aging population, that means they also will have or are having the challenge of caregiving. When you have, a very, very significant number of your population may be made up of individuals who are 65 years and older. And then that means you are facing an aging population. So a population is said to be aging when that population has more than 10% of its population being made up of individuals who are 65 years and older. Then you say that such a society is facing an aging or has an aging population, or that society is aging. So in that regard, we will consider Canada as an aging society. So right now, Alberta, which is our own province, is considered the youngest province in Canada. The reason why it is considered the youngest province in Canada is because the proportion of the older people or individuals who are 65 years and older in Alberta hover between 10 and 13% or thereabout. But in most other provinces, they are now nearing 13%, 14%, 15%, 16% of their population being made up of individuals who are 65 years and older. Okay, so the idea of having a higher proportion or a growing or significant proportion of your population be made up of individuals who are 65 years and older is that it comes with needs, because as people age, they face certain, debilitating conditions. Not everybody, but the likelihood of arthritis setting in, the likelihood of individuals losing what we call activities of daily living start growing. And when that happens, that means those people now will no longer maintain their independence. And when they do not maintain their independence, it means that they will be relying on other people. Okay, they will be dependent on other people to take care of them. And that is where that is where caregiving comes in. Okay, and so caregiving comes in those population who are witnessing this kind of a loss of activities of daily living would need care, and the people who provide that care for them. And not only the aging population segment, but also children, younger children, will also need care. So that is why both child care and elder care are very, very important areas of concern for everybody, for policymakers, for government, for individuals, for families. Okay, so this is very, very important. So what happens is that for individuals who are considered to be within the sandwich generation, that is the generation that needs to take care of their younger children or their young children, as well as taking care of their aging parents. So they are caught in between. They are caring for their younger children. They are also caring for their parents. And so people in that situation are considered the sandwich generation. And so it is not a very, very easy situation to be in, because the pressure will be coming from both sides. The demand for care coming from your children, of course, you need to care for them. And also the demand is coming from your aging parents who also require you to care for them. So that's one of the central needs that, is facing the entire society of Canada today. So when we say that Canada has an aging population, we also mean that there are insufficient resources, including home care, long-term care facilities that will absorb some of the members of the older population that will require these facilities to be able to live their lives, or to live out their lives. So we have staff shortages and other problems in nursing homes. So this led to the death of many residents due to infection, dehydration, and malnutrition. One of the time, this shortage of staff and the condition under which the older population that live in institutions or facilities, when this problem came very clearly, or became well pronounced, was during the COVID-19 pandemic. We saw how that pandemic affected a lot of people who live in seniors' homes, who live in assisted living facilities, who live in old people's homes and nursing homes, and they died. A lot of them died. So it's a problem. So that means we need to do more in this regard. And upon it also, we know that today we have elder abuse as a major social problem, although it is often underreported, because some of the people who abuse older people happen to be members of their own family. In some cases, it may be even spouse abusing others they are taking care of. It can be adult children abusing their aging parents they are taking care of. It could also be individuals who have been hired to provide care for the older person. So abuse could happen in these fronts. In some cases, even abuse could happen in some institutions, formal institutions like nursing homes, like assisted living facilities, like elders' lodge, and some other settings where the older population reside. So the next problem that faces the family today is the economic security. So Canadian families face challenges in food security, housing affordability, being able to meet their obligation when it comes to payment of bills, providing heat in the family, in the homes, paying for water, and all the things that we pay for today in our families or in our homes. So it's also very difficult for some people to even afford to eat. Some people have even lost their own home, become homeless, or cannot afford a place to live. Some people live in their vehicles. That's how serious this challenge is. So many seniors, particularly senior women, live in poverty or on low fixed incomes. And when this is the case, it is very, very difficult for such people to be able to really maintain quality of life. The only good news is that Canada has a publicly funded healthcare system, so which allows individuals to be able to access healthcare without payment. But even at that, there are some other things you need to do. For example, in Alberta here, our healthcare coverage does not include prescription medication. For some seniors, it may, but for others, it may not. So depending on the nature of, how old you are and whether you have that benefit coverage or not. So these are some of the challenges we know. So, and also a growing proportion of adult children in their 20s and 30s are living with at least one parent. Okay, so some people call this the boomerang children. Okay, so it's an opposite of what we call the empty nest. So boomerang children happen when adult children who are supposed to leave the home and maintain independent living and independent life due to certain factors, it may be economic, it may be relational, whatever the factors may be, they found themselves back again to live with their parents in their 20s and 30s. So we call that phenomenon boomerang children. So then is an opposite of empty nest. Empty nest happens when adult children leave the home and go and live independently, and by so doing, the parents are now witnessing empty nest. If you have 5-bedroom homes that are home where your children occupy the 4 rooms, and you and your partner, your spouse live in 1 room. So all the 5 rooms in your home are occupied. But all these kids, gradually, all of them, leave the home, leaving the spouse together by themselves. So that is called empty nest. So some people witness empty nest, but we are also seeing a growing number of people having their adult children, or a growing number of parents having their adult children come back to live with them. Okay. So then the next identified major challenge is the impact of new technologies on families. So potential risk of technology. Some people get so addicted to technology. Today we know TikTok, we know video games, we know, so the addictions that come with this. For some families or some children, you cannot get them to think about any other thing, even to live a meaningful life, if not glued to these technological devices. So making it very, very difficult at times for parents to be able to raise these children. And then there's also cyberbullying. People are being bullied, online. Bullying has been there with us for many, many years. People get bullied in school, whether it is in grade school, high school, or in the universities. People get bullied. So, but what the cyberspace has done is to make bullying more easy, and people can hide in the comfort of their private homes and the front of their computers and bully other people without even leaving those comfort zones. And individuals who are bullied within the online community can have the impact just like you could have physical bullying happening. So we know of situations in which people, because of cyberbullying, have, in the case of children going to school, stop going to school. We have also seen cases where bullying has resulted in people, committing suicide. So there are several other things that come with that. So we also know technology facilitated violence. A lot of that exists as well. So the luring of children through online platforms, so online predators. There was a show that NBC used to broadcast on television. And that show is captioned "How to Catch a Predator." If you listen or if you have seen that show, you will know what we are talking about. Where people hide, on the internet, through the internet, start luring little underage children to themselves. And these may be fully grown adults, some of them professionals. So who go online and solicit relationship with minors, and then prey on these minors, and in some cases now move from cyber, chat to physically meeting with these people. And most of the time, it results in a very devastating outcomes. So we also know about identity theft that could happen through cybercrime, catfishing and privacy invasion, cyber security attack, a lot of things that happen within the internet space of today. People can also extort money from you through what they call malware attack, and others maybe in the form of ransomware attack. So in which they may take over or control of your data or whatever through hacking of your system, and then demanding money that you give them X amount of money before they could release your data. So we know about that also. Then today we also know about teen boys that are at risk of sextortion, even girls as well, where they are manipulated into sending nude pictures of themselves. And then those who have captured such nude pictures will use it to extort money from them. And a lot of little girls or younger people, mainly girls and boys, have fallen prey to these kind of internet attacks or internet fraud. And it is a growing area. As I mentioned in the class, our criminal laws have not been able to catch up with all the nuances in the internet fraud and internet crime, right? So parenting has become more complicated due to new technologies because, you can't keep up. Even when parents proactively try to monitor, the activities of their children online, sometimes it's not a very easy thing to do. You might install, a kind of software to monitor kids' activities online, but how can you keep up? And some of these kids of today are, even when it comes to cyber knowledge, they may even be more savvy technologically than their own parents. So making kids to be exposed to some of the contents that adults are supposed to be exposed to. And when such happens, it becomes very, very difficult for these children to handle the impact, the psychological effect of such access to what they ought not to have access to. So then technologies have transformed the way people date. Online dating is now a major business. You know, you will hear about dating online, different platforms provide dating services, and people are using that to be able to communicate with other people, to find love, to find, romance, to find people to marry, and things like that. So, and then even how people break up, you can also find services like that online. And then this has also led to potentials of romance scams. We have some people pose with dubious identity, misleading identity to, scam other people, pose that they love you and you start communicating with them. And they say they may promise that they're going to marry you and you fall for it. And they may demand you to send them money. Some people have sent hundreds of dollars and thousands of dollars to people they met online. And they thought the people they are talking with are real, but they do not know that these people are hiding, online to scam them. So some people are falling victims like that. Americans who are looking for romance, Canadian, especially Canadian women who are looking for romance on the internet are falling prey of that. So then we also have the issue of artificial intelligence, AI. So that is being used today in the manufacturing of sex toys and sex robots. So these technologies potentially engage in surveillance and violate our privacy rights. There have been some cases in the past where stores were using these robots, and in some cases use, cameras, hidden cameras, to be able to catch individuals who want to steal from them. But sometimes, because of the way in which some customers may come into a clothing store and then they go into the change room, and then by the time they come out, they have removed the label on the clothes, tear it off, and then they wear it and drop their own. So some stores were initially tempted to put surveillance cameras on these people. But then, people now realize that surveillance cameras, will compromise people's security. And not only that, privacy issues came to the fore, and they were being criticized. So that is why if you go to stores today, especially clothing stores, what they now do is that they place people to monitor the clothing. They will calculate or count the number of clothing you go in, or the number of clothes you go in to change or to check. When you are coming out from that room, they will count it to know whether it's still the number that you are coming out with. So there are different other ways today to monitor that, but still, people's privacy could be compromised or violated. So new technologies can be used to monitor the health of individuals, especially seniors who live alone. So in that case, it can also help. There is what we call life alert for seniors. So that device could help seniors when they are living alone. If they fall down, they can press it, and then a security company will be able to answer them and say, "Are you safe?" If they feel that they cannot get up, that security company can dispatch somebody immediately, and they'll be able to come and assist them. So devices, technological devices are now being mobilized in the healthcare, in the homes, to do certain things. Even in some cases, robots have been mobilized to do some certain chores in the home for people who cannot do those for themselves. Okay, so then diverse families, intimate relationship, and households. So we have different families that face different social problems. For example, one-parent families. And I tell you that families today come in different portraits. That's what I mean by that. So you have these forms that they can come, that come in. You have skip generation families, you have indigenous families, you have LGBTQ plus families, you have family experiencing disability of a parent or a child or one of their members. Then newcomer families as well. When you talk about immigration, then polyamorous families, families based on platonic parenting and new reproductive technologies. So these we are going to be taking one after the other. So one-parent families. So it's a large and growing family type in Canada today. There was a time in the past in Canadian society where, it was those who become lone parents. Okay, we are so because they lost their spouse. Something happened tragically. They lost their spouse. So the reason in the past for people to become lone parents was predominantly loss of a spouse. But today, the reason why people are lone parents and no longer is not only about losing one spouse. It could be that individuals decided that that's the type of family they want to have. For example, an unmarried woman today can go and become pregnant and have their own child without out of wedlock and then without a man, and they raise their child alone. So today also, it could also happen because of some other challenges. It could happen as a matter of choice. Somebody can go and adopt a child without even getting married. And so in some cases, it is because of divorce. It can also be because of some other reasons. So as of 2021, 16.4% of families in Canada are one-parent families. So approximately 79% of children live in one-parent female-headed households following parental relation dissolution. So the dissolution may come in the form, most of the time, in the form of divorce. So one-parent households face challenges in juggling paid employment and caregiving. At greater risk of poverty, women's childbearing and child-giving and caregiving results in labor force interruptions and impacts income and career progression. And that is true. We have also mentioned this in class, where we say that as a consequence of all these all these things women do, whether it is childbearing, caregiving responsibilities, then we see that women may have their careers suffer as a consequence. And when that happens, it could also lead women having low income in old age or suffering from poverty in old age. So family law reform led to the introduction of a child support and spousal support to address the problem of women and children living in poverty following parental relationship dissolution. So as women tend to have lower incomes than men in heterosexual relationship, women are typically legally entitled to child support and or spousal support. However, non-compliance with child support and spousal support persists. Sometimes even when court has decided that a man should be paying child support in the event of a dissolution of a marriage, it's not always automatic that such support will happen. In some cases, if the man doesn't have a good job where income comes, it may be very, very difficult for them to maintain that obligation. In some cases also, the court has to enforce the law by garnishing the person's income at the source. So garnishing your income at the source is if you have adequate income. But for people who are getting paid, hourly paid, after they go to work, they get their pay that same day, it may be difficult to garnish their income, right? So these are some of the challenges when it comes to payment of child support and spousal support. So then the issue of skip generation families. So we are also seeing now in Canada a situation where the parent of a child or of children may not be there to do their parental job or obligation to their child or children. Instead, because they may not be there, then the grandparents now step in to raise their grandchildren. So meaning that there is we consider that a skip generation. So there's a generation that is not there. A gap has been created. So grandparents are the ones now taking the lead to raise these children. So the reason for this is that the parent has passed, maybe that the parents have passed away, or the parent is unable to parent due to health challenges or health issues or addiction issues, child welfare issues, abuse happening, or the parent has been incarcerated. So these are some of the reasons why the grandparent generation may now step in to raise their grandchildren. So many skip generation families face economic challenges. So these families are often led by grandmothers, many of whom are retired and on a fixed pension or have low incomes. And they have to juggle that, manage whatever that it may not even be enough for themselves, start managing that with the grandchildren. So it's a very big challenge, So it's a phenomenon that we are seeing in Canada. We also have it in the United States, and it's a growing phenomenon. So then, in the 80s, when, HIV/AIDS became very, very prevalent into the 90s, when I was doing my master's degree, one of the research I did for my thesis was on care on the issue of intergenerational relationship, and then I was using the phenomenon of AIDS and how it has impacted intergenerational relationship as my thesis. And in that work, I was able to, find out that in some of the hardest hit areas in the world, especially sub-Saharan Africa, so we had a phenomenon in which the parents and the parents' generation may not be there. And it was grandparents that were stepping in to raise their grandchildren. And it was not a very easy thing for these grandparents to do, and not a very easy thing for these little children who are being raised by their grandparents. In most cases, their grandmothers, because their own parents' generation are not there, have been ravaged by by AIDS during the time of the HIV/AIDS pandemic. Okay, so indigenous families experience intergenerational trauma, as we have mentioned even in the class, as children are raised by parents and the grandparents who survived the violence and abuse of residential school. Yeah, we have pointed out this, that the residential school programming that led to indigenous people, especially indigenous children, being forcibly removed from their home and placed in these settings for educational purposes, but at the end of the day, ended up being abused. The system didn't look after them the way it's supposed to look after them. Many of them faced their trauma. Some of them died and lost their life in the residential school settings. And the survivor of that programming faced trauma. And as they deal with the trauma, they pass on the trauma they are facing to their children. So that has led to the notion or the concept of intergenerational trauma that indigenous peoples face today. So indigenous children are overrepresented in the child welfare system. And you could see many of them being raised in foster homes. And these foster home services may not be, adequate for these children. And some of them who are raised in these settings may end up, showing different reactionary behaviors. Some of them are not in terms with why, or cannot really come to terms with why they are not being raised by their own biological parents, and they resent the system, and that system could lead them to a situation in which they either contemplate killing themselves. There's one documentary I show my students when I teach death and dying in Canada, sociology of death and dying in Canada. So that documentary was about a child called Cardinal, right? The cry of a Métis child. So this child was tossed from one foster home to another until he got fed up. And it resulted in him taking his own life through suicide, and it was after that happened that the government started looking more into the issue of foster home for indigenous peoples. So it's a very big, it's a challenge, So many indigenous communities lack clean drinking water, healthcare, social services, employment opportunities, and access to educational institutions. And as a consequence of that, you could see that they might not have the best education, and because of that, they may find it very, very difficult to find a well-paying job in the society. And then that might predispose them to commission of crime or to begin to take into a life of addiction, whether it is drug addiction, alcohol addiction, or other forms of addiction. And, they cascade into this life, and that may no longer serve them well, and that will no longer serve them well and not serving society well as well. So another group we had to talk about is the LGBTQ plus families. So these people, the couples in this category, we are seeing increase in their numbers since Canada in 2005 legalized same-sex marriage. We have seen a growing number of couples who identify within this community of LGBTQ plus, and it is growing today. So about 0.33% of the Canadian population, 15 years and older, are transgender or non-binary in 2021. So inequality, stigma, and discrimination surrounding LGBTQ plus families persist. So LGBTQ plus individuals are at higher risk or greater risk of victimization, of hate crime, and experience a higher risk of economic vulnerability. So transgender and non-binary individuals are at increased risk of poverty as compared to cisgender individuals. Cisgender individuals are individuals who conform with their biological sex at birth. Or you can call them, heterosexual individuals. Then families and disability. There's another aspect of problem that families face in Canada. So parents of children with disabilities may have challenges finding appropriate childcare. Okay, and so special need, we call them special need children. Finding appropriate childcare is a challenge, even when they are placed in formal schools. It may be difficult. Sometimes the teachers may call the parents and say, come and take your child home. The child is disruptive to the class, and then that might, mean that, the parents have to abandon whatever they are doing to take the child. Some cases, the parents don't even know how to handle such children. So it's a problem. So children with disabilities may experience school violence as well, school violence from other students. Families that have a child with disability are more likely to experience financial difficulties because disability is costly. There are special things, special needs that you must meet. And every need you have to meet, most of them cost money, whether it is in the form of buying medication or equipment or providing care or hiring somebody to provide appropriately needed care. All those are very expensive to finance. So parents must reduce hours of paid employment or leave paid employment to care for their children. So on the one hand, they are losing income because they have reduced their hours, or in some cases, even quit their job. So they are making less money, and then they are also facing, more financial needs because they have special child. Okay, so stigma and discrimination exist toward individuals with a disability who decide to become parents. So that's also another big aspect of the issue. Sometimes when these individuals who have disability want to have their own children, society kind of frowns at them. Or people may not be very comfortable that individuals with disability can become effective parents. So there is that societal stigma in how parents with a disability cannot provide good care for their own children. Okay, so with all the technologies we have in place today, we know that some people with disability can effectively parent. They can provide whatever other parents can provide, And then the next challenge is talking about newcomer families. So today, Canada is growing its population through immigration. And as a country of immigrants, a lot of immigrants come into this country annually. So that means from time to time, you will have those who are new. So the newcomer families are unique families. And when you come into a country that you do not know a whole lot about, and even if you have read about that country, it's one thing to know about the country, another thing to experience that country. So for individuals who are newcomers, well, one of the challenges they face is trying to adjust themselves to the new environment. In some cases, the first thing that they will encounter is what we call culture shock. All of a sudden, you see that things are done differently here. And because things are done differently here, you have to adjust to manage your life within the way things are done, including the laws and the expectations and the conventions that guide the new society you have found yourself. So difficulties in the settlement process include seeking employment, navigating healthcare, and education systems, and all the challenges that come with trying to make a transition. So sometimes even language becomes a barrier for individuals that may not speak French or English. Even when you do speak these languages, you may have an accent, that make it very, very difficult for you to immediately transition effortlessly, or have a very smooth transition. So refugees and recent immigrants are at risk of living in poverty. Some of the refugees, that come here, why they may face poverty is because some of them are even not prepared. They may not have the skills needed, the education needed. They are not professionals. When they come in here, they came here because they are fleeing had adverse conditions in their own home countries. And when they come here, they may become a square peg in a round hole. So it's difficult. It's very, very difficult. So people who come here through what we call the push factor, something in their home country is pushing them. The adverse condition there is pushing them to leave, their homes, to flee for their own life, to find refuge somewhere else. It may be very difficult because by the time they come into a new country, they have to learn the language, get themselves adjusted, may not have the skills, may begin to develop a new skill in order to be able to have access to employment. So it's very difficult for that to happen. If it is difficult for professionals who have skills and who have experiences to work in Canada, it is difficult for those category of immigrants to really adapt themselves. Then think about how it will be for refugees who may not have any skill and they are just fleeing to come into this place for refuge. So immigrants often experience downward social mobility and are at greater risk of living in poverty. So the education and talents of newcomers is underutilized. So what we mean by that is that you might also find situations in which newcomers who are educated, highly educated, some of them with master's degree and PhDs, in some cases, some of them have also worked in their home countries. Immediately they come here, they tell them you do not have Canadian experience. They start questioning, the authenticity of their credentials. And then they will go through a credential, evaluation process. And, their masters may not be rated as bachelor's degree equivalent here. Even at that, there's no guarantee of employment after they go through all those processes. Okay, so newcomers work in low-paid service sector jobs to support their family because when they don't have any other thing to do, they fall back on whatever that is available. So leading to a phenomenon of underemployment, where people who have high skills, higher education, end up working in sectors that require far less skill, far less educational qualification. You get somebody who had a master's degree in their home country coming here to flip burger in a Burger King or McDonald's. So these are some of the challenges new immigrants families face. Then the next identified issue or problem is polyamory. So polyamorous relationships are consensual, transparent, intimate relationships involving two or more individuals who may be raising children. So this polyamorous relationship is a kind of new phenomenon that some people are gravitating to, but not very well recognized in the Canadian law. But not that it doesn't exist in Canada, it does. What happened is that 2 or 3 people, I have even seen one documentary, video clip, where one woman was claiming that she now has 2 partners or two husbands. One helps her with instrumental duties, like anything that has to be repaired in the home, that man will be there. And then the other one, helps in other aspects. And 3 of them are living together, according to them, living happily. And this woman practically has 2 husbands, right? And they 3 agree to be in this polyamorous relationship. It has been recognized by Canadian courts that such parents are supposed to have rights, but still, it's one of those things that people are experimenting with. It's a new phenomenon, but it's kind of gaining some traction. So polyamory is becoming more common in Canada, the United States, Australia, and many European countries. Polyamorous families face stigma and discrimination. But one thing with this polyamorous, relationship is a little bit different from, individuals who are considered to be polygamous. In Canada, polygamy is against the law. Okay, so where one individual marries, or a man marries 2 wives. So it's against the law. It's also against the law in the United States. But when people now come together under an arrangement, not that they are legally married, but they make arrangement and see themselves, 3 of them, in relationship, raising a child, and then, they are being recognized as a kind of family where the players have parental, rights. So I do not know if you are able to accommodate that. What is the difference between that and a polygamous life, where a man marries 2 wives legally, as done in some countries in the world? Okay, so looking at the new context for childbearing, for example, platonic parenting, embryo adoption, gestational surrogacy, and egg and sperm donors. Think about that. Platonic parenting happens when 2 individuals who have never been in a relationship deciding to raise a child together. Okay, this child may be adopted, and they come together to be there for the child as the child's parents. But these 2 individuals were not married, they were not in a relationship, but they decide to come together to do this. We call that platonic parenting. Then there is also the embryo adoption, which allows families, many of whom have completed their families and have remaining frozen embryos, to donate their embryos to other parents. Okay, so the donated embryo now will become a child and raised by another family. But the parents who own, or the man wife who owned the embryo, now donate them to somebody who does not have a child. So raising children like that, the embryo was donated to you, it has another feel when it comes to parenting, just like adopting a child. So individuals who pursue this path to childbearing sometimes face stigma. So the reason why today some people may not go out and adopt a child if they are unable to have one, but desire to have, is because of the stigma. Some people, once you go and adopt a child, for some people, they believe that society will judge them differently from those who actually had their own children. So ethical and regulatory frameworks in the field of new reproductive technologies are insufficient. For example, there are insufficient guidelines in what to do with unused and unclaimed frozen embryos. When we talk about ethical regulatory frameworks, there are laws that guide some of these, because if you leave it loose without any guideline, without any regulation, and then you run into people abusing that, and there will be a lot of unethical issues happening. So that is why some jurisdictions have come up with some kind of ethical and regulatory framework to be able to, guide the reproductive technology. Remember, there was a time people were saying that they could harvest embryos and then use the stem cell of an embryo to be able to grow, new tissues. So what was happening was that we are reasoning about this and say, okay, you harvest an embryo to get a stem cell. They call it embryonic stem cell research. So these embryos that may be destroyed in the process of this, you destroy an embryo in order to be able to use the stem cell to create another or support another life. So people start questioning the ethical rationality, whether it is proper for that to happen when a life is destroyed in order for something to support it, to get something to support another life. So these are some of the challenges when it comes to, reproductive technology of today. Then there is also what we call gestational surrogacy. So this is where a woman who cannot carry or deliver a child may decide to hire another woman to be able to carry the embryo in their own womb for 9 months for the couple who are in marriage. So the embryo is developed and implanted in the new woman, the woman that is hired to carry the baby, and this woman will carry the baby for 9 months and deliver the baby, but the woman is not the owner of the baby. The woman is carrying and delivering the baby on behalf of another woman or on behalf of a couple that have hired her to do the service for them. Okay? So that is what we mean by gestational surrogacy. So in Canada, women cannot be paid to act as surrogates. However, they can be reimbursed for any cost related to surrogacy. So in other words, you don't hire them and say, I'm going to pay you $10,000 for you to carry this baby for me. But you may agree to carry a baby for a couple, and then they will be able to provide services you need during the period of pregnancy, money you use to buy things, if the pregnancy has caused you some kind of need to have medication, some kind of need not to go to work, they can reimburse those costs related to that surrogacy service you are performing. Probably they made it so that people wouldn't just, out of money or greed for money, and say, pay me this amount of money, let me go and carry your baby. Because some of them, after they carry the baby and the baby is delivered, they don't want to release the baby anymore. They now start claiming ownership of the baby because they carried the baby for 9 months. So concerns about the exploitation of poor women who become surrogates exist as well, because some poor women might be used, and exploited in the process. Okay. So now let us pause a while and think about the theoretical perspectives on the family. Just like other issues we have been dealing with under social problems, we talk about theoretical perspectives theoretical explanation that will help us understand better that particular issue. So in the case of family, we have this theory, structural functionalism, which is a major theory in sociology. So the description of this theory is that families, in relation to family, is that it assumes that families, provide a social order and societal consensus. In other words, families are units of society. So it also assumes that a heterosexual nuclear family is the ideal family. Other forms of families may be considered as not essentially ideal. Okay, then conflict theory maintains that economic structures of society shapes families. Okay, the economic structures of society shapes families. Families that are well-to-do economically, you will see how they will raise their children, their access to education, access to health care, access to good life, all those kind of things. The families that do not have access to these economic structures may be in poverty, and that may lead to other issues there. So then, for them, industrialization, for conflict theories, industrialization created a separation between public and private spheres. So it was during the Industrial Revolution that separate spheres were created. Men now ventured into what is considered as public sphere, while women were allowed to occupy the private sphere, which is the domestic sphere, where they provide domestic services, caregiving services, keeping the home, raising the children, while the man ventured out and worked in factories and made money and brought income home. So that's what conflict theory is saying. Then feminist theory, which is another theory, sociological theory, talking about the family, feminist theory will try to examine gender-based inequalities and unpaid labor and issues like violence against women that may even happen in the family. So for symbolic interactionism, families are actively created and negotiated in everyday micro-level interactions. Okay, so it is in the process of our interaction that families are actively created. You might think, why do you say that? Yes, families may have one aspect of conceiving a family, that families are rooted in biology, right? They share some kind of biological connection. But today, people are also creating families in the course of their social interaction. You have people who say, oh, this person is like a family to me. He's now the family I have. And they may not be related in blood. They may be people who share, or who are roommates in a long-term care facility or in an assisted living facility, but they have come to now understand themselves. They are there for each other. They provide support for each other, and they consider themselves as family. So even though they are not blood related, so that's what we mean by the fact that according to symbolic interactionists, families are actively created and negotiated in everyday micro-level interaction. So that's sometimes what you see. Then social constructionism as a theory believes that families are socially constructed and change in relation to the wider societal context, right? So ideologies about families can be used to advance political interest. And you will see this, you run into this every time when politicians want to canvass for vote. In the United States, here in Canada, they will start saying, oh, this political party is interested in family values. They promote family values. And for that reason, vote for them. Okay? So, and then another political party, they may say this political party does not believe in family values. Okay, their policies undermine the family cohesion, undermine family growth and stability, and for that reason, do not vote for them. So you see politicians stick out with these ideas, when they are coming to people canvassing for vote. Okay, so social constructionism is of this view that ideologies about family can be used to advance political interest, and that families are socially constructed, and because it's a social construct, it can change. And so even if you look at the way family has been defined now, no one definition now serves the purpose. You define the family in a certain way, and the way you define it carries with it implications, policy implications and other implications. So for that reason, depending on what the purpose is, the family could be defined one way or the other. So looking at these theories one after the other, so structural functionalism says that the heterosexual nuclear family with a male breadwinner and a female homemaker was normative for middle class and upper class families after the Second World War. Then structural functionalists view this model of the family as ideal in raising children. Did not embrace diverse families. So when it comes to having different shades, different portraits of the family, structural functionalists will be opposed to that. What they subscribe to will be heterosexual nuclear family, in which a man is the breadwinner, a woman is the homemaker, they raise children for the next generation. That is the kind of family that structural functionalists will consider as stable and good for society. The challenge with that is that, other forms of families exist and can also support society, can also be stable. There are individuals in single parent families that will turn out to be very, very good and decent contributors to society. So any breakdown in social institutions like the family, according to structural functionalism, are detrimental to the wider society. So this perspective does not address the financial dependence of women in nuclear families and the difficulty that women face in abusive marriages. Then conflict theory. So according to conflict theories, the economic structure of society shapes family life. Think about it, it may be a struggling family, a suffering family, because of either access to or inability to maintain economic well-being. So that affects and impacts the family negatively. So industrialization, according to conflict theory, created a separation between the public sphere of work and the private sphere of the family. So women increasingly became relegated to the domestic sphere of the family. Women's productive and economic roles were diminished, and women lost economic and political power. So then feminist theory. So there are gender-based inequalities in the public sphere, according to feminist theory. The public sphere of the labor market and in the private sphere of the intimate relationships and families. So for them, they believe that issues of women are neglected. Women are to some degree deprived and subjugated, whether you talk about what happens in the family or what happens outside of the family. So then for liberal feminist theories, they believe that, there is inequality that exists in the public sphere, and women are not treated well. Think about, pay inequities that women may face and other marginalizations that women may face in the public sphere. And then radical feminism focuses on issues in the private sphere, for example, violence against women and issues related to women's bodies, access to abortion and contraception. In other words, for them, the radical feminists, these are rights that women should exercise independent of men, independent, regardless of the view of even their own spouse, women could canvass these rights and actually have them. So the critiques, this particular feminist theory critiques the heterosexual nuclear family as problematic due to the financial dependence that women experience in that setting. Then for symbolic interactionism, they believe that individuals actively create families through everyday experience, as I have told you before. For example, cooking for family meals or preparing for celebrations. The notion of family is fluid as it is constantly negotiated, created, and recreated. Sometimes members of a family may reject themselves. They may bring in new person to join as a member of the family. So these are, you create and recreate in the process of interaction. So the parent-child relationship are fluid, are fluid in actively negotiated and is actively negotiated and change over time. And you could find that it happens sometimes when, parents, initially children depend on their parents. As they are growing up, parents pay and support them. And then after some time, the children are now the ones supporting the parents. And they may even, in some cases, after the children have grown, you could see a widening gap, or you could also see a disagreement or conflict between children and their family members or their parents. So those things can happen according to symbolic interactionism. Then for social constructionism, they believe that families are socially constructed, as I said before, and they change over time in response to the wider societal context. In other words, as society continues to change, families change also. For example, according to them, advances in medicine and technology facilitate the creation of families through new reproductive technologies. So traditional family ideologies are used to advance political agendas. For example, politicians portray themselves as family-oriented to garner political support, just like I said before. So then the social consequences of family life. So families and paid labor. So consequences of unhealthy relationships, consequences of relationship breakups for adults, consequences of parental relationship breakups for children. So families and unpaid labor. So women predominantly carry a disproportionate responsibility for child care, elder care, housework, and other aspects of domestic labor. So gender-based inequalities in unpaid labor persist when men and women work the same number of full-time hours. They also persist when women are the main breadwinners in a relationship. Okay, so we see that happen. So women are more likely to undertake the more invisible forms of unpaid labor, the emotional and mental labor, and that is caring for family members, providing nurturance. So more women take parental leave than men, and this can negatively impact the women's career progression, because the time you take in parental leave may have been the time you would have used to grow on your career, but then it is spent, outside of your workplace trying to raise a child. So, and you might now come back to find out that those you started the employment with are now one step ahead of it. Those kind of things could happen. So then women are more likely to experience financial dependence in a relationship. It is more difficult for women to leave relationship because of some of these challenges. Some couples may stay in unhealthy or unhappy relationships because of the economic constraint or children. For example, unaffordable housing. If we break up, where am I going to live? Where will the food come from? Those may be the challenges some women may face in their relationship. Okay, so staying in an unhealthy relationship negatively impacts the mental and physical health of adults. So then consequences of relationship breakups for adults. So the consequences depend on economic resources. So where there is, less resources, it may lead to poverty, it may lead to deprivation. So then the presence of the children. Here, sometimes it's very, very difficult if there are children in the relationship. Then that means these children may face some challenges because of the separation or breakup of their parents. May lead to depression, lead to some psychological challenges. Even the children's educational trajectory may be altered as a consequence of that. Okay, then it can also depend on access to social support. Those who do not have adequate social support may suffer more upon breakup. So the quality of the relationship before the breakup, if the relationship before the breakup was wonderful, great, it becomes more challenging and painful to live outside, outside of that union. But if it is very toxic, relationship before the breakup may help individuals to heal, may even encourage their well-being, or make them, live more better life than when they were together. So the circumstances surrounding a breakup is also another factor. Okay, if the circumstances surrounding the breakup is certain that it was very, very toxic, there was a bitter battle, probably legal battle, all those things may affect what will happen after. Okay, so then the solution of relationships that we are characterized by abuse or conflict can help individuals feel less stigma and more optimistic about their future. So women are more likely to experience economic insecurity following relationship dissolution, particularly if they have children. Women are more likely to initiate divorce, reflects the unequal division of unpaid labor in heterosexual relationships, reflects the potential experiences of abuse. Okay, let me also say this, it's like whatever that is being said about dissolution of, and they keep mentioning heterosexual relationship. By the way, breakup, abuse can also happen in homosexual relationship, in same-sex relationship. So there is no immunity. It's not because someone is in same-sex relationship and then, they do not have a marital conflict or breakup. It happens in every marital arrangement, whether heterosexual or non-heterosexual. So then consequences of parental relationship breakup on children or for children. So what we see here is that, children, depending on the age at which this happened, and then depending on how stable those children are economically, so you might end up seeing that the transition in the living arrangement may be very challenging for those children. School moves and exposure to parental conflict, all these things may be very difficult for those children to adapt. Children may also start seeing their grades suffer. They may not be willing to, go to school. Some of them may even witness some kind of mental health challenges or manifestation as a consequence of the breakup of their parents. So the impact of parental relationship dissolution on children is not uniform. Some research suggests that children experience negative outcomes due to parental relationship breakup. Some children can develop greater emotional resiliency, independence, diplomacy, negotiation, and coping skills. So what we are underscoring here is that the impact is not uniform for children. While it may be very devastating for some children, for some, they have found a way to adapt. So family law can address the needs of children following parental relationship dissolution. It structures financial obligations of individuals following the end of a relationship. Division of assets and pensions, spousal support, child support, and other costs related to children. It addresses the best interests of children and decision about custody or parenting time need to be made by family court judges. So whenever there is this idea of custody of a child, when there's dissolution of a parental relationship, the court look into several variables. Most of the time, the custody is granted to their mother, to the children's mother. But in some cases, if the man shows evidence that he is also capable of taking care of his children, and that the woman is irresponsible or has addiction issues, custody could be granted to the man. But in some other cases, there's what we call joint custody that is granted to both parents so that visitation rights will be accorded to each of the parents. Kids can stay with this parent for this number of time, and then they go and spend the other with other parents. Keep alternating it in that fashion. So it depends on what the circumstance is. So health consequences of family life. So caregiving and the health, then family violence. So when it comes to caregiving and health, so married men experience better health than single men. But single women experience better health than married women. So women's responsibility for unpaid labor improve men's health, but negatively impacts women's well-being. So caregiving can negatively impact the physical and mental health of the caregiver and can also lead to caregiver burnout. Why we say that when it comes to caregiving responsibility, it is the women that bear most of the brunt. That does not in any way suggest that men, you do not see men who are the sole caregivers in their own families, taking the entire responsibility. So there are men who are caregivers to their children, or caregivers to their spouse, or caregivers to their aging parents. So we must not lose sight of that fact. But when we talk in terms of women in this fashion, we are acknowledging that most of the time the responsibility rests on the shoulder of the women than the men. So neoliberal economic policies resulted in cuts to healthcare and social services, shifting caregiving responsibilities to the family, and most of the time women. So this is one of the challenges in advanced industrialized societies that are witnessing, the aging population. So you may have heard about, the retirement of the baby boomers. So the baby boomer generation that happens to be the generation born after the Second World War, during that period, 1945, 1946, all the way to 1964. For a lot of scholars, that's the period of time. So that is a very large cohort of the population. So that population is now retiring. Some of them have started retiring. Many of them will near retirement very soon. So, people are postulating that when they do retire, that will increase the number of people who are old in the society. And then by implication, will also increase the need for caregiving. And this need may be so much so that the formal institutions may not be able or be enough to cater for these needs, meaning that the bulk of the work of caregiving will now rest upon families. And these families, most of the time, it will be the women that will be the ones providing the care. And the issue of family violence. Children and youth can be abused by parents, other relatives and caregivers, and siblings. So the forms of abuse can be physical, sexual, emotional, etc. So the internet facilitates victimization through child pornography, exposing children to sexually explicit contents, etc. So rates of family violence increased during the pandemic. Many women were trapped in their homes, unable to escape an abusive partner. Child abuse was not being reported due to school closures. So elder abuse is also a growing concern due to our aging population. For example, financial exploitation of seniors happen, victimization from their own spouse, and sometimes from adult children or members of their own family. So caregiver burnout may occur when Canadians who work full-time still lack the resources to care for aging parents. So there is insufficient support for those providing care to a parent with dementia. So those parents with dementia, which number is increasing today in Canada and other advanced countries, poses a greater challenge of caregiving. Dementia patients or the individuals who are suffering from dementia become very, very complex for somebody to manage because their behavior can be very troubling, and you have to really, support them almost around the clock. They have the tendency to wander away, and when they go and leave the family, they may not be able to find their way back to their home. So meaning that you must constantly pay attention to them, provide them with their needs, create an environment that doesn't trigger, a kind of reaction that dementia patients used to have. So try to calm them down, there are a lot of mitigating, interventions for individuals with dementia that an ordinary informal caregiver may not be well equipped to provide. And if that is the case, it becomes very, very challenging for such informal caregivers to provide adequate and needed care for parents with dementia or Alzheimer's. So there may be large numbers of women who have traumatic brain injuries because of intimate partner violence, what we call IPV, experienced during the pandemic. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, one of the things that that situation created was increase in family violence. All of a sudden, individuals who were not usually together the whole of the day, we are forced to be in the same space the whole of the day and the night. People who used to be, or families, or couples who used to be, or live in a situation where in the morning the man goes to work, or both of them will leave for work and then come back in the evening to have little time to spend together. All of a sudden, they are now spending the whole day, the whole night together. So, and then they are spending this time together in a situation where some of them have lost their job, not enough income was coming in, and how to juggle with their needs become a problem. So in that environment, conflict was bound to increase, resentment increased, and mental health of people started suffering. So, and there were some individuals who engaged in fighting, and the fighting could be the result of this traumatic injuries, maybe, or brain injuries may be the result of this conflict or fighting in their home during that time. So the visible nature of traumatic brain injuries make it difficult for others to recognize and report abuse, So these are some of the things. And sometimes it's very, very difficult for you to report abuse that is happening to you in the hands of a close family member or a loved one. Because when you report them, that means the authorities will come and take them away, and you will still be concerned about their well-being. So it's a very awkward position to be in. But unfortunately, that's what is happening today. Okay? So right now, the law says that if there is intimate partner violence, and the police gets and is reported to the police must press charges. Formally, the police will have the discretionary power not to press charges if they believe that nothing significant has happened. But right now, it doesn't matter. Once it is reported to the police is bound to charge. And then when they charge the matter to court, let the court decide whether it is trivial, whether it is maliciously reported, or whether it has validity. So right now, the police cannot choose whether to press charges or not. They have to by law. Okay? So coercive control is also a type of intimate partner violence, where perpetrators attempt to erode the victim's autonomy, social support, and self-esteem. So methods may include isolate the victim from family and friends, humiliate them, and perhaps even controlling where the victim goes and who they spend time with. So intimate femicide, that's women being killed by a male partner, they are or have been in relationship with. So that may happen. So we call that intimate femicide. So trying to live an abusive relationship is a risk factor for intimate femicide, because sometimes if you want to leave, it could result to that person actually dying. Okay, so looking at solutions to family problems. So for example, caregiving and aging population, what are the solutions to that? What can we do as a society to help that or to address that? So economic insecurity, what can we do? The impact of new technologies, what can we do? Solutions to family violence, what can we do? You know? Okay, so caregiving and aging population. So potential solution for aging population will be advocate for the needs of vulnerable seniors. And then stop ageism. Okay? Stop ageism. Stop discriminating people on the basis of their age. So increase accountability in long-term care facilities, making long-term care facilities more accountable so that they will deliver quality support to those living there. So invest in home care and in care for the growing number of Canadians with dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Okay, that's a segment that requires intense and also requires, trained caregivers. So then potential solution for gender inequality in caregiving. Government policies to better support caregivers, probably through honorarium, through some tax incentives, and other kind of allowances. So encourage fathers to take parental leave. I think this is growing. A lot of fathers are doing that now. A friend of mine just alerted me about 2 weeks ago that the wife was going to have a baby, and that he is taking parental or what we call paternal leave to support that. So share unpaid labor equally in heterosexual relationships so that the man does, the woman does. So expose and address gender-based inequalities. And for economic insecurity, potential solutions will be to address the need of affordable rental housing, social housing, and accessible housing for Canadians with disabilities, low-income seniors, and women. Understanding of the needs of diverse families and develop targeted approaches. For example, Canada Child Benefit in 2016 focused on low-income households and was effective in reducing child poverty. So changes to tax policy and the retirement income rules. And the impact of new technology potential solutions will include parents need greater support in helping children use new technologies to protect them from online dangers and harms associated with social media. So greater research to understand how new technologies impact children and youth is needed. More expenditure on these to embark on such research by the government. So then solution to family violence, raise attention in government and criminal justice system, educating healthcare professionals to better identify and support victims, focus on supporting individuals after they experience victimization, and address prevention. For example, addressing the economic dependency which keeps many women in abusive relationships. So they consider the effects of lockdowns due to the pandemic. We are not praying to have any other pandemic, of course. So children and women may be trapped with abusers in situations like that. To address the overrepresentation of Black children and the indigenous children in the child welfare system. Changes to family law that provide a more comprehensive understanding of abuse. Then, of course, create more awareness when it comes to coercive control. Okay, so that is it for us for this unit dealing on dwelling on family. And I hope, if you have any question after listening to this recorded lecture, you will be able to provide, present your question in the next class. So thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you in the class. Thank you. Bye for now.